This is my Turbo Ultima Pro XL from the, I guess it's the early 90s. It was my dad's, and it had a 17-turn brushed motor in it for quite a while. I recently upgraded it to a brushless setup. It's a Hobbywing 10.5 turn setup running a Turnigy 4.2 milliamp hour LIPO, which is plenty of battery and fits in there pretty good. And here's the Hobbywing motor back here. I had to turn the punch all the way down to level 1 out of 9 because it was doing wheelies like crazy, and to safeguard the gearbox a bit as well. My old receiver was glitching really bad. It was the old, I can't remember how many megahertz, 27 megahertz or whatever it is. So I upgraded to a Dumborc RC in it. It's about $40. Been thrilled with it. It's been working great. No glitches, all the range I could want and more. Another thing I had to do is I had a large bumper on here before to protect the front suspension. But once the car got up about 35 or so, it would start to wheelie, even with moderate throttle applications, and it flipped quite a few times. And I was afraid it's going to break something. So I put the original bumper back on it, and I also put some weight on the front to keep it down. This is really my first run since I put the extra weight on it, and I also lowered the suspension, hoping that would keep it from flipping as easily and just keep the center of gravity down a bit lower. But I think otherwise it's mostly stock. These servo savers are pretty fancy looking. They have bearings in them. They may well be the stock ones from the Ultima Pro XL. And I have some tape back here as it's tearing up the motor guard when it's wheeling all the time. I was able to get the car up to 45 miles an hour with this setup. It's a 28-tooth pinion gear. Otherwise it's stock gearing. So it's quite quick. That was the only speed run I was able to do because it was windy that day, and the car actually, when I'd go into the wind, it would just flip over. The wind would get underneath it, and it wasn't pretty. So hopefully it's a little more settled today with the lowered suspension and the extra weight up front. So we'll see how we do here. I'm going to ease into the throttle. And there's too much play in the suspension, which makes it, let me ease into it, hard to, I'm just really uncomfortable with driving this car. So you can see though, it rips pretty good. It's only the 60 amp ESC, but it doesn't seem to get too hot. The 120 is a better fit, especially if you're going to go off-road with it. This car's not too heavy. Whoa! And it doesn't get hot. The ESC stays pretty cool to touch, and as does the motor. So you really can't go full throttle, even with that weight on it, unless you roll into the throttle. And then it does alright. It is handling better with the lowered suspension, but I'm just paranoid about wrecking this thing at speed. Now it does look like I bent the rear wing, so I will have to fix that one of these days. But man, this is, from a performance standpoint, I wouldn't really want it any faster. Like I said, I have the punch turned all the way down to level 1 out of 9, and I still can't go full throttle unless I roll into it. It's a handful. I had to take the whole gearbox apart because with the old receiver, it was glitching so bad that it actually stripped out one of the grub screws from a shaft that rolls on, and luckily nothing was damaged in there. I thought I ruined the gearbox, but once I took it apart and re-lubed everything and got it back together, used some Loctite on that grub screw, seems good. And I had to re-glue the tires on the rims because they were ballooning like crazy and it was messing the car up at speed. I'm not very coherent because I'm having to concentrate a lot harder with this car than I normally have to when doing these short videos. One other thing, I upgraded the rear rims, rear tires to a cheap set on Amazon. I put a link in the video description. And they're a larger diameter. So that was making the car roll over a lot easier until I lowered it. A lot more traction than the old tires I had. That in combination with the higher center of gravity, it was just rolling over way too easily. But it seems a lot happier now. I'm so glad I lowered it, and I'm going easy with it. I'm still getting the feel for it. But yeah, it seems good. I'll bring it around and show you guys the setup here and see how hot the motor is getting as well. So I can easily touch this motor. I'd say it might be, 100 degrees or so. It's not hot. The ESC, it's about the same. It's just, kind of lukewarm. It has low C 2.15 inch rims on the front. Here you can put 2.2 inch tires on here, which I really hope because these are starting to get fairly worn. Here's those Amazon tires I was talking about. They're a pretty good deal. $16 with the rims, and they're 2.4 inch rims. So a little taller, a little taller overall gear ratio with that setup, which is what I was looking for to get some more speed out of this car. Although once I turn the timing up on the setup, it's up to 22.5 degrees now. It's got all the speed I want. I mean, if you're a total speed freak and with a more stable modern car, I could see some more speed, but this thing is, I have it set up for on-road driving right now, and I can't imagine it being too much faster. But again, I'm not just flooring the car because I don't want to lift the front end. I'm just rolling into the throttle, but you couldn't really use much more punch than this. So there it is. I haven't taken it off-road yet. My spiky tires are a little smaller in circumference, so that would effectively shorten the gear ratio a bit. And I will try it in the baseball field one of these days. But yeah, it definitely handles better now with it lowered. It made more of a difference than I even expected. It's not prone to rollovers like it was. And I can floor it. In a corner I can get into the throttle and it's happier than it was. I'm cringing as I drive though, because I'm just not trying to destroy this car. So I also have videos on my Kyosho Turbo Raider. Look at those tires balloon. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but they balloon a good amount, of course making the gear ratio even taller. So interesting setup. But yeah, my Turbo Raider, I got a couple videos on that, and I also have a Kyosho Big Brute. So if you're interested in either of those, check those videos out. I don't love the body on this car. My dad, he bought it secondhand so he'd have a car to run with me, and he didn't have much time back then to build any more cars. He was working overseas a lot. So this was a good setup because it was, already built. It wasn't abused. I think it was raced a bit, but it looked to be in good condition. And I'm glad I have it today. And I really like this brushless setup. The gearbox is fairly strong for vintage standards. I certainly wouldn't put something this aggressive in my Raider or my Big Brute. So there we go. So if you have any kind of Ultima, I think they all share the same gearbox. So don't be afraid to, well, I don't have that many hours on this car, but it looks like you can, within reason, go brushless, and I don't know if you'd want anything more than 10.5 turns, but you can see for yourself how it's running here. I do want to GPS the car again, but I had to use my cell phone, and the car wrecked with my cell phone on it at about 35, and my phone was okay, but I really don't want to do that again. But I am curious with more traditional sized rims on there, how fast it'll go. Maybe closer to 40? I don't know. That extra weight on the front is helping it with less understeer. I always hate adding weight just because, you know, lightness is your friend for acceleration and efficiency, but I don't notice it other than the improved steering, and it still wheelies if I roll into the throttle too hard. And I'm impressed with how long the battery lasts. Like I said, this is a 4,200 milliamp hour battery, and still got lots of punch right now, and I've been, you know, consistently going pretty quick with it here. And I bet I could go twice as long as I have on this battery. So I don't think there's any need for a bulkier battery with a longer life than this setup. So I'll go ahead and stop the video here. But again, here is the Turbo Ultima Pro XL. One day I hope to get a different body on it. Just don't like the pink and yellow combinations. It's just not for me. I'm not sure what this body is either. I don't think it's the original. So yeah, there you go. If you have any questions, let me know. And I still need to trim these wires up. I just put them in here thinking I might try this in one of my other cars, but I don't think that's going to happen. Touching the motor now, it's a little warmer. It's probably closer to 120 degrees. And the ESC, it's nice and cool. It's probably still around 110. And lastly, you can see the adjustment on the suspension. I just raised this up one. I raised the front up one hole, and then I brought it out one notch as well.